Reading from the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Canto 10, Chapter 47, Text 58. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Etāḥ paraṁ tanu-bhṛto bhuvi gopa-vadhvo. Govinda eva nikhilātmani rūḍha-bhāvāḥ. Vāñchanti bhava-bhiyo munayo vayaṁ kim brahma-janmabhir ananta-kathā-rasasya. Uddhava sang, among all persons on earth, these cowherd women alone have actually perfected their embodied lives. They have achieved the perfection of unalloyed love for Lord Govinda. Their pure love is hankered after by those who fear material existence, by great sages and ourselves as well. One who has tasted the narrations of the infinite Lord, what is the use of taking birth as a high-class Brahmin or even Lord Brahmā himself? So, greetings from Govardhan. It's been quite a wonderful day. We had a group of 20, and they came for breakfast and they came for lunch, and I feel like at my ashram. And I think, in one sense, I was thinking, Bhurjan Prabhu said that he always would ask someone who came into his room, what is your taste in Krishna consciousness? And he made the point that our taste is our door to the spiritual world. Because what we like to do, what we like best, we can generally offer with the most devotion. And like what we like to do, we can be the most absorbed in. Of course, bhakti has to get to the point where we're not just liking an activity, we're liking the service that the activity provides. But there's something to say there. You know, I took charge of the prasad service, and somehow I'm very expert at it. I'm very focused at, and it was fantastic prasad. There's a place near here called Ananda Bazaar. Some disciples of Bhakti Srila Dhanurdhara and Bhakti True Maharaj, maybe very high-end Aryans. It's not just that they cook so expertly, they manage so expertly. So it's right on time, huge tiffins. And, you know, very reasonable for $100. For 22 people, we got lunch and breakfast. Lunch was Mata paneer sabji, succulent. They know how to cook cauliflower, so it just absorbs the juices. Rice, dal, chapatis, salad. But it was just wonderful. And then after they finished, they all just slept on the floor in my place here. And very grateful. So that was really nice. Anyway, the story that we're doing is this Uddhava, and I've been doing it every day. So the group that's been coming every day will come at 5:30. So I'm going to try to catch up to where they are. But of course, the main point here is that Krishna has to please and relieve the distress of his devotees in Vrindavan. And it's a very sensitive issue and he has to send a message. And he's accomplishing two things. One, he wants to pacify the residents of Vrindavan, and he wants to show the exaltation of their love. And to do that, the person has to have certain qualities to be able to do the service, but also to demonstrate that even one with the topmost qualities, Krishna says, I am Uddhava. He glorifies him. Krishna himself glorifies. Is humbled by the devotion of the gopis, which indicates really what the mission of the Bhagavatam is and the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's to give us the highest pleasure and the highest love. And it's very, very rarely attained. It's very, very rarely given. Anarpita charim charat Pranaya Vatirna Kalo Samarpyatam Unatoj Vala Rasam Subhakti. Never before given for a very, very long time. And Uddhava, as he sees it, what he sees is called rūḍha-bhāvāḥ. Rūḍha means the best bhav, the highest bhav. It's also called great bhav or mahabhav. He said when he saw that they were at this stage of rūḍha-bhāvāḥ, which is demonstrated by divine madness, the most intense absorption on a person is the disappointed lover. But this is spiritual. And they're talking crazy. There was like 10 different types of talk, and disappointed and just absorbed, and it gets to the extent that Kachit, one gopi, Sri Radha, she sees a bumblebee and thinks it's Krishna's messenger, and that's the whole thing. She's talking to this bumblebee. She's so overwhelmed. And then Uddhava, because he's a direct disciple of Brihaspati and is such a learned person, even though he doesn't yet understand this subject, he doesn't have personal realization of this Braja Bhakti and this prema, he can understand from the symptoms that this is extraordinary. And he just feels so grateful that because of this separation, he has been called to Vrindavan. And he's been able to see what would it be like, just the intensity. The forms of intensity in this world are the forms of ignorance and passion. The forms of intensity in the spiritual world are the forms of devotion. What is kirtan? That nice definition of kirtan. When the bhava in the heart is expressed by the discipline of music. So he sees this and he says, what you establish is unparalleled, even by the munis, those who are silent, which means mountain, those in the forest, there's no one to talk to. You know, they had the opening of the Govardhan Retreat Center. And it's 21 acres. And they have these bhajan kutirs that you can book. And they have deep basements in them. And you can book them. Just imagine you go down to, there's nothing there. And you go down there, you can't but concentrate. There's nothing else to do. Our problem is we chant in atmospheres which has so many other options that we never can become concentrated and focused, and therefore we don't get realization and taste. But they're not going to have people live there, but you can book it for 3 hours, but they have 2 rules. No cell phones, no electronics, and no other person. Only one person in it. So those kind of people that have lived in the forest and have purified their minds because there's no one to talk to. Well, when the senses are controlled, the super souls have reached. And what do you eat? So you're not feasting on pizza and ice cream. So it's very, very sattvic. It's nothing compared to this level of devotion. So Uddhava he begins to just glorify them and explain that what you have is absolutely unparalleled. But he's going to deliver the message of Krishna. And he's going to deliver the message of Krishna as it is. He may pacify them afterwards in his own words, but he's going to read the message of Krishna. Remember, he's confidential with Krishna. He's very close with Krishna. When you have something confidential, you have the frame of reference to understand it. If you bring it out, very few people do. So when you have something confidential, you have all the history of it, the understanding of it. Or it may not be socially acceptable, or it may be abused if you put it out. Just think of the things that you have that are confidential and then you put it out. What could happen? So who will you give a message that is confidential to? One who has unalloyed love for you and therefore only wants to please you. So Uddhava goes and he delivers this message from Krishna. And Krishna initially is kind of Gyanik, explaining his position, but it's not really just Gyanik. It's not really just Gyanik, because a devotee sees everything through the lens of his personal relationship with Krishna. And I gave the example, if a Braja Bhakta sees Sitaram, Lakshman, Hanuman, he thinks Krishna is dressed as a king. So it doesn't, the purpose, previously, when Uddhava tried to pacify Nanda, he was preaching Gyan, Krishna's Aishwarya, Maya idam tatam sarvam, I pervade he was his Krishna's immanence, because he saw in this prema bhakti, this intimate love. And it's only in this intimate love that you can actually have vipralamba, this deep separation. And when he came to Nanda Maharaj, he could see, this is why someone's so, bodhisattva, someone with the incredible, the topmost intelligence. He could see, comes in, he sees Nanda Maharaj, he said, this person could die within 1 or 2 days. He has lost his will to live. Krishna is my life, and without Krishna, I have no life. The greatest separation, the greatest pain is the pain and separation from the deepest love. And what is this love? It's God's love. It's the supreme love. We can become attached, but this is the supreme attachment, and therefore the most painful separation. So he's thinking, Nanda Maharaj can die at any moment. So he tries to preach again because the conception of God as immanent or superior is not as powerful of as God is my son who is gone. So by that Jnanic explanation, he was trying to reduce the paraṁ so he wouldn't die. You can't have that feeling of separation from God who's immanent, who's everywhere. You don't have that same feeling as when he comes in a human-like form. And in the prakat, the unmanifest, he's God. So, and then, so Krishna, same thing. It may be a Jnana, but even the third verse of the Chaturshloki Bhagavatam, when it describes prema, what's the vision? You see God everywhere, inside and outside of everything. Sandrandana Visheshatma. It's so thick. The example of prema given in the Nectar of Devotion of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the example of prema is Bhishma Dev. Because Sandra, it means it's like metal. Sandra means metal. There's nothing else in the consciousness but Krishna. So it gave the example of Bhishma Dev, that man who fought in so many battles. That person who spoke so many subjects, now just focusing on Krishna. So it's my lover, the God. My lover is God. So what? You may be God, but don't cross me. Very intimate, powerful. So after delivering that, Buddha is reading Krishna's words, and then Krishna says, but actually, the reason I left is to intensify your love. That which is before the eye can be much more distant than that which is in the mind and heart. So even if I'm separated by the eye, you can be in direct contact with God, but not have him in your mind. And God can be separated and you have him in his mind. We don't think when we want to contact Krishna that he's someplace else. Do we think that God is going to have to get in a spaceship to achieve him? No. We think every association with Krishna will be right within our consciousness. That's actually the fact. It will be right within our consciousness. And of course, I make that point many times, that we're separated by God, not by a physical distance, but by consciousness. So it's a message to the gopis. And basically, you can sum it up. I am there in my bhava. I am there in my devotion. Where else can God be? Again, I think Hegel or some philosopher said, where there is no circumference, the center is everywhere. So this was the message he gave to them. And then he gave a very, very, actually speaking, it was such an incredible day. I mean, these people stayed like 2 hours for breakfast, 3 hours for during lunch. And I get up very, very early, blissfully early. So I may have brain fog. So he gave that example. That which is before the eye can be much further than that which is in the mind. So absence, the English expression is absence makes the heart grow fonder. So Krishna is demonstrating, he's pacifying the gopis, but also demonstrating an incredibly relevant spiritual point. We're not going to go back to Godhead by going any place, and neither are the gopis going to be in association with Krishna by going any place. In fact, the opposite happened. When Radha went to Kurukshetra, Krishna was there. She was in separation. She was in separation because it wasn't her lover. It was the same person, but it wasn't her lover. Because Rajave, she was sitting as a king. He was sitting as a king. It's surrounded by his retinue. So he couldn't manifest that aspect of himself, which was in relationship to Radha. So she was in separation and union. And the gopis were in union and separation. So Krishna gives this message, and he gives the example that if a girl is in love with someone and the person is distant, they're close in heart. Now, I have to open the door for the other people that are supposed to come. We're almost up to the point. We are anyway. Okay. Great here in Govardhan. I love being here in Govardhan. Association and no one's here yet. People are must be quite exhausted themselves. Everyone just went, mwah. The prasadam is just so. And for me, it's not just a taste. I just appreciate expertise, how they manage that. You get these huge tiffins that feed 20 people. And it's on time and it's steaming hot. And it's so well cooked. But it takes its toll on a man who is old. So some people will come, I think. I can never tell. Sometimes I have 10, 15. Yesterday, I had 2. And then he says that directly to them. When someone is always absorbed in me and aloof from everything else, I am in their presence. It's such an important point. Isn't that the story of Hiranyakashipu when he challenges Prahlad? Where is your Krishna? Where is your Krishna? Is he in this pillar? He's there. because he's everywhere, but he manifests personally. Mayati tamidam jajada. I'm pervading everything, but I don't have the defect of impersonality. He can personally appear. And then Krishna gives an example. He said, when I went to the rasa dance, when I went to the rasa dance, those devotees that came back in their intense separation experience my personal presence. And I know, same thing for the wives of the Brahmins. The ones that came back, they were the ones that attained Krishna eternally first. So Uddhava delivers this message, and the gopis are pacified. And Uddhava is very happy, he said, because now they're happy. And then he said they're so disturbed because he understands. Yeah, come on in. Anybody else there? Yeah.
Yes. Here.
Who?
Here.
Okay. Let them all come. What?
Jagannath, please come in.
Okay, good. Okay. Nice. Thank you for coming. Nice. Have you been going around with Achamurti?
I haven't seen her yet. She is very tired. Lots of devotees.
What's that?
Lots of devotees came to her. She is tired, so we will meet on Brahma-mandala, but Brahma-mandala date is postponed because of the rains.
Oh. Okay, but you've been going to some of the pilgrims of Bhaktivedanta Goswami, or?
Yes, yesterday we...
Nandagaon.
Yes, we went to Kadamba.
Kadamba, wonderful. Good, nice to see you here. So, then different gopis begin to speak. And even though somehow or other they're kind of satisfied, they're kind of satisfied, but each of the gopis speak, and then we know that in Rasa, somehow my phone went off and I got this other sound in here from Mahavan, so what happens, we know that rasa vayaṁ, the ultimate reality, is love at its highest. And we know the lens by which we perceive that, and the reality by which we perceive that, is through Krishna Lila and the different emotions that either bring or represent love at the highest. So it's described as like an ocean. So we see from each of the gopis some different feeling of jealousy, or they're just thinking of Krishna. So he's in Mathura now, and I'm not qualified, and so many other emotions that come when someone, and then Uddhava, he just stays in Vrindavan, and he starts to visit all the holy places. And one of the symptoms of bhava, the visible symptoms of bhava, the things that sometimes people, I used to be in the Krishna Balaram Mandir, and some person would come and he would pretend he would be in ecstasy. and he'd roll on the floor and he'd cry, but anyone can imitate that. Yeah. Anyone can imitate that. But there's other symptoms that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur mentions that people can imitate, like avyakta kalitvam. Every moment engaged in Krishna's service. I really appreciated, sometimes I'm going to the ISKCON place and I'm sitting next to Vaisheshika Prabhu, and he shares his realizations with like really deep like emotion. And his main realization is giving everything to Prabhupada and not a drop left. Not a drop left. And it sometimes seems kind of scary in one sense for those on an egotistical conception. That type of, but that's what love is. If we think that love is the highest, then the highest thing is about someone else and not ourselves. When we actually think about it, it can become maybe just a little frightening. Anyway, one of the symptoms of advanced devotion is this enthusiasm to see all the places of Krishna's pastimes. You know, he did this here, what happened here. And the example I remember once, I was on I think I told this, the Navadvip Mandal Parikram. It was really great. I remember with Tamal Krishna Maharaj and all the senior Vaishnavas. Actually, it's very interesting. What happened is a lot of my friends were on the GBC. And when I would go to Mayapur, somehow or other, Tamal Krishna Maharaj would let me stay in his room, in his living room, share the bathroom. Now I'll tell you an embarrassing story. We woke up at the same time. He said, you can use the bathroom first. And then I went in the bathroom, and then he went in the bathroom, then he went in, and then he walked out, and he said, no one's used my soap before. No one's used my soap before. But I was there, and what happened is there was this Braj Mandal Parikram. And, you know, I'm from New York. I never went camping in my life. I'm like there's two types of people. My god brother Varsana Maharaj, a very special devotee in New Vrindavan, who's like, he said, there's earthmen and there's aliens. Earthmen are the people that like the land and, you know, camping. And then there's aliens. People go like from New York, they like, so, but it was camping out and it was walking from village to, you know, all the 9 islands. And so the thing is I was doing it, you know, but I was coming back during the day. And I'd come back so ecstatic because you're just, you know, these Bengalis, they would lead kirtan in this tune that they could sing forever as they would walk. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. It was just so blissful. And I'd come back and they would all be completely fried from the meetings because they were in meetings all day, horrible meetings. And I was like, you know, and I'm already like overly enthusiastic. So I'm so enthusiastic in all the meetings. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj was so powerful that the next year he switched the whole thing so that the whole GBC could go on the Navadvip Mandal Parikram, you know, because he saw, and that was like every kirtanir that you can imagine, B.V. Govinda Swami, Niranjan Swami, and imagine them all just going from village to village, chanting. You know how ecstatic it is, Mukunda? Going to village, and then when you get there, you know, they bring the prasadam, and then you're camping out. And so I remember Satchidananda Swami was there, and it was like getting to be dusk. It was getting to be dusk. And someone said that some of, you know, one of Lord Chaitanya's associates had some house, you know, across the, you know, the village. And I saw him in like practically the night running through the fields, you know, to go to that place with the person. And I thought, you know, like, I'm an alien, you know, snakes on the ground, what's we doing? But that enthusiasm. So Uddhava went to all the places of Krishna's pastimes, and he started telling about Krishna, but they were always telling him also what was happening in those places. And it described that what happened is that the gopis, they became so absorbed that it seemed like a moment. It's a fact that if you're actually focused in the moment, time exists in the future and the past. It doesn't exist now. If you actually focus now, there's no time. There's no time now. And we all experience that. Like, for example, if we can get absorbed in chanting. But if you think, when will I finish my rounds? It's the oppression of time just kills you, right? But when you get absorbed. So anyway, Uddhava, and then we'll start with today's verse. Mukunda, you were here the last few days. We did this. We can always do it again. Yeah. Maybe new things. So, so what happened is naturally, Uddhava was just developing incredible appreciation for the gopis. And one of the impetuses for love is the people who love the people you love. Like, for example, when I would have my Vyasa Puja, it was a big thing, my mother came. Because people that had relationship, my mother came. You know what I'm saying? It was like they automatically loved her. So one of the main impetuses for devotion is the devotees who have the same relationship that you aspire for. That's one of the main impetuses. So, naturally, that's you feel, so he just felt like glorifying. And we mentioned this great definition of kirtan is when the bhava in the heart is expressed by the discipline of music. It's the main devotional activity is kirtan. Throughout the Bhagavatam, everyone does kirtan. Of course, there's two types of kirtan. One type of kirtan is done as a sadhana. It's a practice to achieve love of Godhead. And one type of kirtan is an anubhav of love. In other words, one kirtan you do to get love, another kirtan you do out of love. And of course, even ourselves as practitioners, we should have some sense that that's why I just say, trying to understand what Shuddhanam, they talk about Shuddhanam. Like you can see that when someone really has love, even though they're chanting the name, and maybe not even and of course they may be expert, but maybe not so much more expert than everybody else in music. But if they really have love in their hearts, that the holy name has so much more of an effect. when you hear it. And an example I remember of this is that these doctors who I gave Radha Krishna deities to, I stay at their house, they host my Vyas Puja. They bought this property and it had an old diner on it, and they spent like $400,000. They had a medical complex, but they spent $400,000 renovating this diner to distribute prasadam. And it was probably the least likely area for people to be vegetarian. But, you know, they got enthusiastic. So they had this opening, so they invited a lot of Indians. So they had people doing kirtan there. And the Indians were just talking. And, you know, the kirtan was just in the background. And all the Indians were just talking. And then Niranjan Swami started to lead kirtan. And everyone became silent. And I thought, what's the difference when someone chants purely? This is what it's like a philosophical speculation, not a mental speculation. When someone chants purely, what happens is Krishna is a person. So Krishna reveals himself to that person because within the name is the form, quality, and pastimes. And it's just like any person. I explained this many times. They can remain a stranger if there's no love. So it's the same person, but he's not manifest. So when someone actually has that deep love, then Krishna manifests in the name. And then people who hear that name, it's much more powerful for them. That's why also Madhava's kirtans are so powerful. Madhava's kirtans. I remember these two yoga studio owners in New York. You know, he was leading kirtan in the MVT. And then he came over to the table to talk to them. And he was talking with such realization. It's almost like he said, like, you know, there was some you could see real Shakti because of the devotion. So anyway, Uddhava because he's a devotee, that's another reason he's sent. Because if someone's not a devotee and they see someone superior to them, they're going to get envious. Because Icha Dvesha Samutena Dvandva Mohena Bharata. We're born, this is why we're in the world. So if someone's superior, so one of his qualities is that he was beloved of Krishna. So if the world's not about you, it's the world's about Krishna. And then you see Krishna, and I gave the example in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Canto when Krishna was taken to New Dwarka, to New Vrindavan, Nava Vrindavan. And he was taken there because Krishna was in this catatonic state, in separation from the residents of Vrindavan, and they didn't know what to do with him. So Lord Brahmā came and he said, let's take him to this Nava Vrindavan, which Vishvakarma, the architect of the demigods, recreated Vrindavan in kind of like perfect detail, even the flowers and everything, but in kind of like wax statues or something like that. So they brought Krishna there and he was like, they couldn't give him out of consciousness. And then they started telling him, wake up, it's time to take out the cows. And then Krishna wakes up and he sees it's 11 o'clock and he's so embarrassed. I overslept. You know, and then he sees there's a statue of Mother Yasoda before him. They put fresh butter in the hand and he starts eating the butter. And then he goes and sees that the gopis are there. And he starts talking to them and he sees they won't move. So he says, they're angry with me. And then the residents of Dwarka, the queens, they can't be there because if the queens are there, then Krishna will know it's still Dwarka. And, you know, at the end of the pastime, they brought him out. And then he kind of looks across the bay and he sees Dwarka, and then they explain to him what happened. But the queens of Dwarka are in the forest, and they're allowed to look at the scene. And when they see Krishna in relationship with the gopis and how much deeper his heart is revealed, and therefore how much more beautiful he is. The more you're loved, the more is your beauty. That's what Radharani is. What is she? She has the most love. She has the most beauty. Why? Because she wants to offer the best to Krishna. So when they see the Krishna, Akila Rasamrita Murti, in his full manifestation of love, they don't get envious, they get ecstatic. So Uddhava, he also is picked because he's such a devotee. And this envy is just it's so pernicious, it's so prevalent in the world. We even see in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that when Rupa Goswami comes, Bhakta Rupa, he's like a new devotee. And Lord Chaitanya is giving him all this attention because his ability to conceptualize and express Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam, the highest feelings of devotion. And his verses, and especially when you hear his verses spoken in someone who can chant Sanskrit like Nityananda, Tunde Tandavani Ritim Talabhyute, Karna Kroda Kandambani, this alliteration and this music, and it's what Rupa Goswami can do. There's a book called Chitra Kavitwani, where this is like, there's kavis, and there's people who could write novels, but kavis, masters of words. They say there can be 1,000 great novelists in a century, but there can maybe only one or two kavis. And a kavi is a master of words. And in this Chitra Kavitwani, there's 11 exercises almost that you have to kind of complete. And they're so intricate. You have to write a poem with one syllable. So he wrote one poem, it was like, and it was Krishna's pastime. Then you had to write one poem where it says the same thing backwards and forwards. And then you have to write a poem where it says the same thing backwards and forwards and up and down. And then you have to have your name in a circle written around it. I mean, it's so Rupa Goswami was like Krishna Das. It's called Kaviraj. Krishna Das Kaviraj Rasika Bhaktamaj. Krishna Das Kaviraj Rasika Bhaktamaj. The Maj means the chief of all the people that understand and express. And it says his poetry is so powerful that even the vibrations hit a stone, it would melt. But Narottam Das Vadhva, nothing happens to me, he says. So, so he brings Rupa Goswami in, and he starts to glorify him in front of Swarup Damodar. And somebody else very high, he was just checking them. He was checking them. Are they going to get envious? So you have to be very, very advanced to resist this feeling in the heart. Because envy, because false ego means superiority. He wants superiority. So it's so difficult. And envy means it's the mechanism of the mind that makes things less than they are to make you feel superior. So envy serves the false ego. And therefore it's described, what's the highest devotee? Paramo namatsaranam satam. The highest devotee is nirmatsara satam. Nirmatsara means without hate. Envy is the same thing. So Uddhava, instead of becoming envious, he becomes so appreciative. And it becomes very significant for the purpose. One of the purposes that he went there for, not directly, it was pacify them, but indirectly, because it's for the world, is to show that this is the highest love. And what's the proof of it? That the most qualified person is humbled. The most qualified person is humbled. So anyway, Uddhava just feels now he has to glorify them. And we just read this verse, and he says, among all the persons on earth. Remember, this is the disciple of Brihaspati who has the most knowledge. The cowherd women alone have actually perfected their embodied lives. And why? Because they've achieved perfection of unalloyed love for Krishna. And the word is rūḍha-bhāvāḥ. There's two words, Mahabhav, great bhav, and rūḍha-bhāvāḥ, best bhav. And it refers to this thing. So of all love, they've achieved the highest. And how does he know? Because he saw it. That after so many years, they're still in this madness and separation. Their pure love is hankered after by those who fear material existence. So we discussed this the other day. What's the cause of material existence? Is that sense of superiority that you want. So, and how do you get out of it? How do you get out of material existence? Material existence is caused by a particular type of consciousness. See, so this type of material existence means because you want to be the enjoyer and controller, a position you can't have by your constitution, you're put in the illusion you are by having a material body. But one who has devotion, he's identifying with the soul. If you have devotion, and I gave the personal example, every single person here, young or old, has had their trial by fire. Good, do you ever have your trial by fire? The dark moment of the soul where the whole world's falling apart. Now. Right, so I just was like, it was one of those times. There's times in your life that you want to be a general. Your soul breaks over their knees and rips off your medals. So what did I do? This Gitanagari, where is a great place. Outside of Vrindavan, there's no place more Vrindavan than Gitanagari. Even the people who live there, it was just such a special place at that time. There was no phones. They didn't have a cell phone reception in this valley. Can you imagine the ecstasy there? They had to drive off the farm and ride down the road and try to get something. And I was just staying in this cabin. I told the story many times, and I was just chanting and chanting and chanting and chanting. And then I had the realization, the activity I'm doing and the person who's doing this does not end with the body. But the fear, the ambitions based on the false self, that just absorbs you in the body. And what does that mean? Vayaṁ dvitiya viniveshitasha. From that arises duality and fear. But when you're, so if you want to be free from material existence, you have to identify with the soul. So those, he says, this is hankered. The type of love they have is hankered by those who fear material existence. We all fear material existence. There's a book, Rabindra Prabhu used to lecture on it, called Denial of Death by this German philosopher, Ernest Becker, where he described that so much of what happens in our psychology is this fear of death. You know how people want to be famous because they, fame lives more, and you want to have family because family continues on. And so many things are impelled by this. So it's so prominent. And the whole Bhagavatam, what's the question of the Bhagavatam? What is the duty as a man is about to die? What should he not do? And what's the answer? If you want to be fearless at the time of death, Harinam Anukirtanam. Yeah. Now I am 72. The game's up. It's like faking your immortality becomes harder and harder as you get older. It's like, okay, 20 years, I can forget it. When it starts getting down to 10 years, it could be 10 years, could be 20, could be 5 years, but it's certainly, even if you're an optimist, how long do you get? So you start thinking, you have to be absorbed. You have to start identifying with the soul. Otherwise, and I tell that amazing story, and I can tell it again too, is that there was this disciple of Prabhupada, and in the early days, there was a group of ladies in Los Angeles, very advanced. There's about 8 or 9 of them. And they're completely dedicated to Prabhupada. And they would go out book distribution like 7 days a week, all day long. And they really were like completely dedicated. And there was one lady among them named Gauri. And she actually was from a very high class family, because the museum in Harvard is called the Peabody Museum, and her father was like the curator. So she was from that family. And she got cancer. And the doctors told her, that's it. So she went to Vrindavan, and we used to read her Chaitanya Charitamrita, and we watched as she was dying, her consciousness was rising. It's like really amazing. Sannyasis would come in and read to her. And then an amazing thing happened. There was an Ayurvedic physician called Narottam, who was also the Ayurvedic physician to Prabhupada, and his son is Leeladhar. He still has a clinic. And he put the cancer completely in remission by Ayurvedic medicine. And what did she do? She went to America to distribute books on the Christmas marathon. I mean, they had such, and they were so advanced, actually. It's like I tell you with Vaisheshika, when he was sitting next to me and looking at me and with his conviction, not a drop. When you have not a, when for everything for Prabhupada and his mission, you see someone has that realization. So she went, and then it came back, and she came back to Vrindavan. And she lasted some more time. And I remember I was up in the Himalayas with a book distribution party. We ran out of books. And anytime I'm in India, I just can't wait to get back to Vrindavan. So I came back, and then they told me she's leaving, and I went into her room. And she was on the floor. She wanted to die on the floor of Vrindavan. So she was laying on the floor. Maybe she had a mattress. And we started doing kirtan. And pictures of Prabhupada were just going before her eyes. And she had 2 god sisters on either ear, like kind of Boyajan's wife, Jagatarini, and maybe Mother Vidya. And then the Ayurvedic doctor came in, these are for people. I told this story before, but there's people here that haven't heard it, so I'm telling it again. But it's always nice to hear. And the Ayurvedic doctor comes in and feels her pulse and says, disease is finished. You have 1 hour left to live. Because he was a Vaishnava. So he understood what's the real disease. It's the false ego, which attaches one to the body. Disease is found. What is he talking about? And then I've never seen anything like this in my life. And people are chanting like anything. They're chanting. It's just, everyone's just chanting. There weren't many of that people in Vrindavan. And then she wanted to take a picture of herself smiling to show Vrindavan Vilasini, another, like these stalwarts, Mother Labanga Latik, Mother Vrindavan Vilasini, Jagad Ambika, they were famous. Shama Priya, they were just famous. In those days, you become famous if you were famous kirtan, famous cook, famous. And she wanted to take a picture to show that you can perfect your life by dedicating yourself to Prabhupada. And then, about 10 minutes before she left, she looked up and said, this is intense. This is intense. And then she passed away. So disease is finished. So they hanker for this, those who fear material existence. We have to hanker for this. Then there's no fear. You can see that. Krishna-katha Swami is doing pretty good in that regard. I went to see him. It's up to Krishna. For one who has tasted the narrations of the infinite Lord, what is the use of taking birth as a high-class brahmin or even as Lord Brahmā himself? Because all these things are meant for that purpose. Anything that's high class and religious, all these things. What is Dharma? Dharma means every moment before your consciousness, you have a myriad of decisions to make. The decision, whether it's attachment or attachment. Like for one, it may be attachment, like for you, Mukunda, right? Remember when you were in Vrindavan and you thought you were going to renounce the world? You remember? Right? You're going to be with Ayendra, but you were married, right? But you,
I still was with Ayendra.
What?
Even though I was married.
What's that?
I'm saying I still was with him, even though
I know, but when you went to that sadhu, who was your Siksha guru,
yeah,
right? He told you your dharma was attachment. And what does that mean? It's the choice you make that elevates your consciousness. It wouldn't elevate your consciousness to try to imitate Ayendra and be, you know what I'm saying? It wouldn't elevate you. So I'm saying the choice that you make to elevate the consciousness is dharma. And it's intricate because it deals with who you are at the particular time. That's why guidance is necessary, Shastra is necessary. And you see how many people make mistakes. What is dharma? And you can choose detachment for egotistical reasons. You know, so you're a sadhu and you're respected. So here it says, but one who has tasted the infinite narrations, then what is the use of all this other stuff? You've already got it. And that's mentioned in many verses in the Bhagavatam where it says, Dharma swanushtita pumsam viviksena katasya nopadiye Dharma swanushtita. Swanushtita means expertly performed your dharma. If you don't have rati, if you don't have this, what the gopis have, then shrama eva hi kevalam. It's useless. It's only useless. It's certainly. And then, you know, when you get into the commentaries, I used to do that, but somehow I got older and I forgot it all. But And then how amazing it is. The same thing that these simple women wandering around the forest, seemingly spoiled by improper behavior, of course, improper behavior. They're going off with, someone's not their husband. So it says, how amazing. He's just amazed. What is that word? How amazing it is that these simple women, in other words, just like the wives of the Brahmins, they couldn't do puja, they couldn't do any of this stuff because they had children. There's too much dirt, and, you can't, they have so clean and that, they couldn't do any of this. Have achieved the perfection of unalloyed love for Krishna, the Supreme Soul. And what did they achieve? Rūḍha-bhāvāḥ, the stage of perfect love, the best love. Still, it is true that the Supreme Lord awards blessings even to an ignorant worshiper, just as the best medicine works, even when taken by a person ignorant of its ingredients. So it's such a nice analogy. Medicine works even if someone's ignorant, if it's good medicine. So even if they don't have all these other preliminary qualifications, if somehow they've given themselves to God, tesham satatayuktanam bhajatam priti dadami, then he gives them. He gives them the knowledge. So they have it. They have it. It doesn't matter all these other things. Aho patasva pachato guriyan yajivagre vartate nama tuvam. You know the rest of it?
No.
How wonderful it is. Aho patasva pachato guriyan yajivagre, one who's chanting the holy name purely. Vartate nama. He's already bathed in all the holy rivers. He's already. So, when Lord Krishna was dancing in the Ras Lila, the gopis were embraced by the arms of the Lord. This transcendental favor was never bestowed upon the goddess of fortune or other concepts in the spiritual world. Indeed, never was such a thing even imagined by the most beautiful girls in the heavenly planet, whose bodily luster and aroma resemble the lotus flower, and what to speak of worldly women who are very beautiful according to material manifestation. So somehow or other, they've attracted the absolute truth. And the contrast is going to be like, because Uddhava, initially, he's kind of like, he's starting to think, I want this mahabhav. I want this highest love. But then he was thinking like, I'm presumptuous. Maybe I can just be some grass. You have that image is always there. Lotus feet. The image is always there because I mentioned that before, the lowest part of the body is glorified. What does it mean? What to speak of that person? If the lowest part is glorified, what to speak of that person? So just and what is the image? He's like the chief minister, high-class Kshatriya, cousin of Krishna, learned person. And his position is such that a particle of dust from the feet of these persons is mercy for him. We'll read one more verse. Asam maho chanarenu jasamaham, but asam maho chanarenu jasamaham syam vrindavane kimapi gulma lataushadinam yajustya jam sajanamarya patam chahitva pejur mukunda paravim shrutibir vimichdam. The gopis of Vrindavan have given up the association of their husbands, sons, and other family members who are very difficult to give up. And they have forsaken the path of chastity to take shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda, which one should search for by Vedic knowledge. Oh, let me be fortunate enough to be one of the bushes, creepers, or herbs in Vrindavan, because the gopis trample them and bless them with the dust of their lotus feet. You know, I listened to this one lecture, and it was really interesting. It was by a modern intellectual. And what he described is, and I think it's relevant here, and I think I mentioned it before, but some people may not have heard it. What he described is that the most powerful commodity is one's reputation. If you lose your reputation, there's very little you can do to negotiate in the world. It restricts you in so many ways. And it says that reputation is usually something that's earned over many, many years by one who is not only competent, but productive and has character. So people really want reputation. And he describes in the modern world that people can game the system of reputation. In other words, get it very cheaply by what's called virtue signaling. They jump on a cause and they find someone who's down, and then they jump on the cause that, you know, this person should get it, you know, and that means they get a reputation because, but it's not a substantial thing. But the point he made is how important reputation is. That what Uddhava is saying here is, who gives up their reputation like this, like the gopis? They gave up their reputation. In that kind of culture, they would chase wives and, you know, family people. What was the power of their love, their detachment? And that's why it says, you know, they gave up even their good karma. So anyway, this is Uddhava's bhav. He's like this high-class, intelligent person, and he's been overwhelmed. So he's actually achieved his mission in one sense. He delivered the message, which had some effect to keep the gopis alive. And he was able to see it, and by two ways, able to demonstrate that it was, because he understood it and he was going to go back and actually say, and by his own actions, he offered them respect. He fell at their feet. He glorified them. Okay. I'm going to first go to the audience here. Mukunda, usually any point, because you hear the last few days.
Points. Just the last thing is, if you mentioned this reputation point, when someone just finds one who's fall down,
yeah,
and like starting, that's basically what we call hype. They don't get reputation. They get what we call hype.
Well, but they're trying for reputation.
They become like famous. Get some
it's Savid Varai Hosta Karai Samstuta Parashapashu Yat Karna Pajot. Men are like dogs, hogs, camels, and asses. They glorify other people like dogs, hogs, camels, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And another thing,
but in the modern world where people are like that, people actually can become prominent, but not like in a regular culture. You know, a regular culture, you know, people have standards. You can't just, you know, it's really high standards of how you have to behave and what's allowed. And the society knows that. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Shamsunda, do you have any thoughts?
That even the so powerful that even like ignorant people can take medicine and they get cured. You don't have to be highly intelligent. And I was just thinking that Krishna is so merciful, especially like this medicine that he brings.
Yeah.
Like you just have to sit and hear. They can be very ignorant, you know, but just by sitting and hearing Bhagavatam, being in association with sadhus, and that's the medicine, and it's enough. You can attain the highest goal just even being ignorant.
Yeah, you know, there's a verse like that in the Bhagavatam, because there's a verse in the very beginning where it says, one of those Tasmat verses, you know, therefore one who chants here and remember Krishna. Then after that, so someone will say, well, then I might as well give up, because to think, chant here and remember Krishna, that's beyond me. But then the next verse answers it, and it says, Shushrusro, Shradadhanasya, Vasudeva Kataraji, Sat Mahatsevana Vipraput. You just hang out with the sadhus. Punyu Shravana, you know, Shushrusro, Shradadhanasya, Vasudeva Kataraji, Sat Mahatsevana Vipra. Punya Tirtana, that's, yeah. And a lot of times you see that I've seen classes, and it's not by a scholar, it's by someone who's humble and following, and they have like realization. I remember like Pradyumna, he's the biggest, I mean, anytime the Pradyumna come in my room, he said something that I remembered and used for the rest of my life. And it was like so absolutely out of this world. Like just came to me one day and said, well, what does bhakti mean? Bhakti means to make yourself available. I said, wow, it's like, that's like so powerful, you know? Oh, Sambandha Gyan. What's Sambandha Gyan? Metaphysical knowledge. You have to know the relationship between the relationship between one truth and another. Right? If your Gyan is like this and your, you know, bhakti is like this, you become impersonal. If your bhakti is like this and your Gyan is like this, you become sahaja, you know, or anything like sadhana and preaching. I said, wow, that's so interesting. Sambandha means the relationship of one truth to another. So
maybe you should combine the sutras.
If I can
inspire him to do that.
It's so hard. Even I saw him this time, you know, it's not easy. You got to break through a lot to see him. But he would never go in the Bhakti Center for the classes. Sometimes I used to give these seminars and he kind of pop in the back, you know, but he would never go to any classes. But one time I heard him glorifying a class, and it was by this devotee, Urjasvat. Urjasvat was an African-American devotee who was just so simple. And even his kirtans, he was my favorite kirtan. Hare Krishna, you know, it was just like, he would just like be chewing the name, and the sweat would be coming off his brow like Louis Armstrong. You know what I'm saying? And then he'd come and he'd see all these people with the Andhra melodies, and everybody's so talented. And he was like, Hare Krishna, you know, it was just, and Pradyumna said, wow, that guy's salt of the earth. That guy's salt of the earth. Because he had some heart attacks and he was talking about, yeah, so, yeah, those simple people that just can hear, right? Okay, yeah.
How do the gopis attain this kind of bhava? is there any cause of it, or what was at the very beginning of this bhava? How did they explain it?
I think that's mentioned, the different types of gopis. Some are nitya siddha, they're eternally there, and some have got there by practice. And I think there's the rishi-charis and the muni-charis and the shruti-charis. Well, Lord Chaitanya showed us how you get it. If you want to know from our platform how we get it, Lord Chaitanya showed us, right? You have to become attached to the holy name. And it's funny. Look at Lord Chaitanya's life, right? He took sannyas. Okay, then he went and preached. Then he went to Puri. Then in Puri, the first 6 years, he was more with the devotees, and then he went into his nirjan bhajan. And what did he do? He developed absorption in the holy name by listening to the songs and stories. He developed a sambandha, relationship to the holy name, by listening to the songs and stories of the person whose name he was chanting. And he worshiped the deity or the form of the person whose name he was chanting. But the first thing is you have to have lobha. You have to have a real sense of greed and relationship with Krishna. And the way that comes is you have to hear the Bhagavatam, and you have to practice Krishna consciousness, worship the deity. Panchanga Bhakti. What is Panchanga Bhakti? Rupa Goswami mentions that even one who doesn't have bhav, if he performs them without offense, he can get bhav. Atarmadye sarvasheshte nama sankirtan nira aparade poya paya premadan. One who, all the 9 processes, chanting the holy name is the best, and if one can do it without offense, he can. And then there's mercy of Prabhupada. Okay, Jamuna Jaya, are you there? Everybody would like to see you here. Somehow you're not here today. Are you? No. Shocking. Someone check and see if she's okay. Anybody like to say hello?
Hare Krishna Gumaraj, Tota Gopinath here. So good to see you and hear from you.
Thanks. Okay, great.
Anybody
else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, this is Divya Shakti. So I'm grateful to be here today. So I'm present for for these 2 lectures. I'm here, and it's my fortune, and I'm very successful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. So nice. Thank you so much, Divya Shakti, for coming. Great. Okay. And I hope this brings you to Vrindavan as soon as practically possible.
By your prayers, Maharaj, that would be so nice. Thank you.
Anybody else say hello?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Gopi Gita. Thank you for class.
Okay, you have to say hello. You have to check on her. She's doing the deity worship. Okay, Shyam Sundari is enjoying here because she knows the deities and everything of it taken care of by you, Louisa, and Divya Shakti. So she's able to be peaceful here. Otherwise,
good.
And whatever she gets here, she's going to bring back.
Yes, of course, Maharaj. And we are very happy serving the deities here.
Oh, yes. Gopi Gita is coming. Okay. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you very much for class.
And you saw, you helped me with that little editing. People really liked that article.
Oh, I'm glad.
And then from your comments, I saw how to kind of take one. Can you say hello to everybody?
Hare Bol, Hare Krishna.
He's talking about his brother. You ever met Kawachandji? Okay. And see you soon. Yeah, it's going to be great. I spoke to Bhaktivedanta Swami. We'll take lunch one day with him.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, anybody else?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Thanks for the class.
Okay, everyone give their prayers to the Iranian devotees.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Maharaj, I'm looking forward to coming.
And you got a visa. The others, now they've shut down.
Yeah, that was what I wanted to say. They need prayers.
20 Iranians who are coming. And now the embassy won't give somehow the visas. It's just like, imagine how they feel. They're just devastated.
Indian embassy.
Yeah, I don't know. They don't know why. Your mother get a visa?
No, not yet, because she wanted to come for Puri, so she didn't.
Oh, she has time.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Anybody else?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Anybody else say hello?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, this is Hemalata Radha.
Okay, say hello here. You gotta say hello.
Hello, everyone. Andrea, Chamasundari. I don't know everyone, but nice to meet you all.
Okay. Okay. You got your ticket now, right?
Yes, Maharaj, finally.
You can't buy a ticket to Vrindavan. You had that problem. No credit cards. I don't know. She couldn't. Okay. Anybody else say hello?
Good morning, Maharaj. Thank you for class.
Okay. Isabel, say hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
You're in your office?
Yeah.
Okay, let people get a view of the beautiful New York City. Okay, good. Anybody else? Okay, now you know these people. This is the Adams family.
Hare Krishna.
Hey, Kaylee, you gotta Kaylee Kadamba, you gotta give me a call, okay?
I will, Maharaj.
Tomorrow at this time, okay?
Okay.
No, tomorrow at 7 o'clock, give me a call.
7 a.m. or p.m.?
PM my time.
Okay.
So that's
okay.
8 on my time.
We'll figure it out.
For you, I'll make it 7:30 so you can sleep a little more.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. It's Lord Govinda. Thank you for class.
Hey, this is my brother.
Hare Bol. Hare Krishna.
Okay.
Hare Bol.
Okay, we'll go now. Once you call for the